Hello and welcome to BSL Talks. This is our last BSL Talks for 2024. And as you all would know, our focus for today is looking at opening opportunities, removing employment barriers for young people with disability. My name is Julie Ware. I am the Chief Services Officer at the Brotherhood of St Laurence. Welcome to you all. We have a great panel that's joining us today, and I'll introduce our guests shortly. Firstly, though, I wanted to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands and waterways in which we are all meeting. I am on Bunurong country near the beach, and I feel very lucky to be living on a land that is so beautiful and so well cared for thousands and thousands of years. I'd also like to acknowledge anybody from a First Nations background who is joining us today and pay my respects to elders past and present. A little bit of housekeeping to start us off. I'm looking forward to a lively discussion, as we all are. We do have some questions already from our registrations, but during the webinar, if you would like to ask a question, you can use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. Closed captions are also available, and you can access that by clicking on the CC button at the bottom as well. We have Auslan interpreters with us today. We have Luke joining us. Thank you, Luke. And we have Sarah as well. Thanks to all of you who have already submitted questions in advance, and we'll get to those towards the end of the talk. The discussion is being recorded today and will be made available on the BSL website over the coming week. So to today's focus, we're really excited to hold this event so close to the International Day of People with Disability, a time to promote understanding in the community of the experiences and contributions of people with disability. The theme this year is amplifying the leadership of people with disability. And that fits really well into what we're talking about today. Raising expectations, opening opportunities, and removing barriers so that young people with disability can get jobs they enjoy, that they're good at, and that pay them well when they finish school. Employment is key to empowering people with disabilities to be financially independent and socially included. And we really know that that's true for all young people. Young people with disability are willing and able to be valued employees, no matter what their function level or disability type. And when we say young people today, we're talking about people aged between 15 and 25, that really important transition period from adolescence to adulthood. We know that we need to address the culture of low expectations for young people with disability and address the system-level issues that result in them following what's commonly known as a polished pathway to poverty. And that starts with all of us. And it starts with thinking about work while young people are still at school and through the supports that we can provide to young people through that transition from school to work. So I will now introduce our panellists and give them an opportunity to talk a little bit about themselves. So firstly, we have Maddie Bergen. Maddie is a youth advocate who works with us at BSL in our Youth and Adult Transitions program. Maddie's going to talk to us today about some of her experiences, both within the school system and then through that really important transition period through to work. So welcome, Maddie, and I'll give you a chance in a minute to talk a little bit about yourself. We also have joining us Dr. Jenny Crosby. Jenny is a researcher from the Swinburne Centre for Social Impact. Jenny has authored some really important research looking at some of the successful interventions that can support young people through this transition period, and we'll hear a little bit more about that today. And we also have Damien Charles joining us from the Northern Territory. Damien is the regional manager up there for NEC. So welcome, Damien, as well. So I might turn firstly to Maddie. And maybe, Maddie, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself before we get into the questions.
Hi, my name's Maddie. I currently work as a youth advisor with the youth team at BSL. I've been in the role for about 6 weeks currently. I'm also working as a barista at a local general store alongside a waitress at a restaurant in the evenings. I have a strong history in hospitality work, but I also volunteered with youth groups in Frankston across the Salvation Army and Frankston Youth Services. I attended David Scott School for 3 years, graduating year 12 in 2023. I'm also a keen hobbyist, undertaking creative endeavours in my spare time. These include crocheting, nail artistry, drawing, digital arts, as well as design and jewellery making. I'm also interested in health and fitness, and I am planning to study a certificate for an allied health, nutrition and dietetic support in 2025.
Thanks so much, Maddie. So I might just start off with a question for you, Maddie, and if you could tell us a little bit about your experience at David Scott School. You mentioned there that you went to the school and how they might have helped you to stay interested and engaged, and how might this have been different from previous experience at other schools?
So at David Scott School, they really focused on what we could do rather than what we couldn't do. They tailored activities to our interests. For example, I wasn't the best at math, and so they were able to tailor a activity around crochet to incorporate maths into it. So it was a really good way to still get outcomes done and complete year 12, but have different ways of approaching that, which was really good. They also treated us like adults and gave us choices that would support us to succeed. I was allowed to use my headphones because that was something that helped me in class. And we also had the opportunity to have our phones, and we were given the respect that we would use them wisely, and that really helped to build a positive experience in adulting. They also provided us with lunch so that we could focus. They provided social opportunities out of class, which helped me connect with students, but also contributed to my schooling. We had a class budget that we were able to plan and organise activities with that would also go to our year 12 outcomes. Some things that we did plan was going to Sovereign Hill, and through that planning we got outcomes, and we also had a sheet that we filled out while we were there, which also contributed to things. It was different to other schools as well because they tailored things to us. So with my previous school, things weren't very tailored, and so I was able to have a much positive experience with David Scott.
And what did that look like, that process of tailoring? Like, was it a conversation? Did the teachers sort of talk about what you would prefer or what would help you and what you might not want to happen? Is that the kind of thing that took place?
So with schoolwork, if I saw what like the material would be, if it was, for, as example, with the math, and I didn't understand it very well, they would tailor it to make it so I could understand it. So cooking, I could do cooking and make a recipe, and then that could tick off more outcomes. Having the opportunity to go and say, hey, I just need to go and have 5 minutes to sit down, and then I can get back to my work after, and having the option to leave class, just let someone know, and then that really gave me a good opportunity to tailor things and get through my schooling. And there were lots of different opportunities. I know now that they have also given people who find it hard to go into school the option to do schooling online. So it's a really good way that they tailor things to the students and help people get through the schooling.
And we know that that can sometimes mean the difference between being at school or not at school, in terms of the types of supports that you've been talking about. Would that be true for you in your experience?
Yeah, definitely. At my previous school, it was not very it wasn't a very supportive environment, so I found it really hard to go to school. I ended up going about 3 days a week, and with David Scott School, as soon as I started going there, I didn't want to have a day off. I would only have days off if I was sick. And something that was really good as well with their approach is we only had school 4 days a week. On the Wednesdays, we would have the taster courses, which I'll speak more on. But we'd do 3 days of work, and we'd also have our teacher for the whole year, the same teacher, which is really good. Instead of going to school and having that anxiety of, I've had a not great morning, letting my first teacher know, but then going to my next class, my second teacher doesn't know, and it's not, you may not get the same reaction.
So that consistency is really important, isn't it? That familiarity, to feel comfortable to learn. Yeah.
Definitely.
And so can you tell us a little bit more then about some of the opportunities that you were provided at the school, and how that might have helped you to explore what your interests were and what you might want to do when you leave school?
Yeah. So when I joined in year 10 at David Scott School, I was given 3 taster courses that we did through the year. Those taster courses included horticulture, community service, and hospitality. I learned skills on cooking food. I also got my food handlers through that, and as well as how to adapt in community service and ways to accommodate and treat people with respect in those environments, which was a really good and positive experience for me. The other experiences that I learned through, from doing that, then I went into year 11 and we did experiences in, with work experience. We had lots of options. So if I wanted to do more things in work experience, I was allowed to. So I started with dog grooming. I really wanted to do that my whole life. And then I found out doing dog grooming wasn't actually what I wanted to pursue anymore. And it was really good to have that opportunity to try out something that I was interested in. And through doing that, I didn't have to go and spend money on a course or a lot of time, which was a really good way to get a taste of what I wanted to do. And then in year 11, we were also given the opportunity of 3 other certificates that we could do. So it was active volunteering, firefighting, or sports and recreation. Because I had a great time doing the community service the year before, I decided to go for the active volunteering, where I got a lot of really positive experiences from, including helping students after school with their homework. And through that, I got connected in with Frankston Youth Services, where I did the school holiday programs. I helped create those in the group there. And I got invited to a local market that the youth council group for that year were creating. So I got to sell my crochet, and through there, I thought, I really want to do this next year. So I applied for the youth council role. I got through where I worked on a podcast for young people, focusing on mental health and the effects of sleep and how important that is. I also got the opportunity to create an awards night to showcase the great things that young people have done in the community. And I also interviewed the Mayor of Frankston, which was a great way to get my experience up. And then I went to Frankston Freezer, so creating events and music events in the community. And that was a really great thing. I learned a lot of event management. I got to create artwork for posters that were going out. And it was a really great thing to do. And once I finished my time there, I decided I was going to do the Salvation Army Youth Advisory Group, and I helped create a program that went for 10 sessions, which focused on helping young people move out of home and give them life skills such as cooking and general like washing machine, how to use these things that are
How to
great.
be an adult.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so incredible achievements that you've had, Maddie. Really, really incredible, and supported from when you were in school to start to think about, where do you want to spend your time? What do you want to do? What have you got to offer? Which is a lot. And so I'm just wondering if you could just give us an update on what you're doing now and where do you see yourself in the future?
So currently, from everything that I got to experience in high school, I have a passion for helping people, as I really enjoyed the community focus activities and my volunteering. So that's one of the main reasons I applied for the youth advocate role with the Brotherhood of St. Laurence. So that is that's something that I really enjoy, and it focuses on what I'd like to do for a career. I'm also planning on doing, as I said before, the certificate for an allied health, nutrition, and dietetic support. My main career goal is to become a dietitian, where I can still help people, but it's also still community focused.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Maddie. I really appreciate it. And it's great to hear directly from yourself as a young person and the supports that you've been able to receive and what's worked for you. So thank you again.
Thank you.
I might turn to Jenny now. Jenny, as I said earlier, you authored a report earlier this year which looked at the school to work transition for young people with disabilities and the ecosystem in which those transitions occur, and then specifically looked at the Australian initiative of Ticket to Work. I know that through that research you identified 6 core interventions that the evidence suggests increases the likelihood of a successful transition between school and work. Just wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about those findings.
Sure. Thank you, Julie. And thank you, Maddie, because Maddie really highlighted in her presentation just now many of those intervention components in action. So it's great, Maddie, to hear that you had those opportunities made available to you at school. So the evidence suggests there's 6 important components that young people need when they're transitioning from school to work. So the first one is family involvement and high expectations. So certainly for many young people with disabilities, particularly people with intellectual disabilities, there's often a perception that they don't need to work, or work's not as important as perhaps for other young people. And so that's something that we really need to change. And so building those expectations early. And also expectations are fluid, so we need to keep on reinforcing those expectations. They're not a sort of set and forget thing. We need to keep building those expectations as people move through their later years of high school and into post-school life. The second one is student-focused transition planning, and it sounds like Maddie's had some really great student-focused transition planning, listening to her talking about her crocheting and some of the event management work she did. So it sounds to me like the school was very good at tapping into Maddie's particular interests and skills and strengths, and so they supported her to plan a transition that was based on her own individual needs. So too often we see transition planning too late. It starts, in the last year of school or even in the last half of the year of school. We want it to start early, from 15, even earlier. We want it to be quite formal, so people are held accountable for the parts of the transition planning that they're responsible for. Of course, we want it to be student-centred and focused, and to involve people around the young person who are supporters or allies. Allies are really important as young people are moving through the transition phase. That may be parents, but it also may be other people in the community who can be an ally.
As part of that ecosystem.
Sorry, Julie. Yep.
Sorry, Jenny, just as part of that ecosystem, is that what you're sort of talking about? terms of allies and that
Yeah,
kind of...
so sometimes it could be a mentor or an older student or a peer. So yeah, it doesn't have to be a parent. Obviously, you know, a lot of parents are actively involved in their young person's transition, but not for everybody. So I think it's having that, you know, that trusted person who's got your back and is on your side.
Yeah.
The next one is skills development. And again, Maddie really touched on this one nicely with some of the skills that she learnt at school, but also then linking into the post-school certificates that Maddie's planning to do. So when we look at barriers to employment that young people with disability face, often it's not related to the disability at all. It's to do with they don't have the skills, they don't have the barista training or the food handling certificate or the certificate one in dog grooming. So it's not that it's the disability that's necessarily stopping them working, but they don't have all of those other bits that you need to transition. So we really want to focus on that skills development, and also, as Maddie also pointed out, those life skills. So we often see people finishing school without travel. They can't travel in the community independently, or they may not have money or other skills. So the more that we can build those skills, then that supports that transition.
And can I ask about that skills building, and is it an access issue, or is it that those courses are just not sort of designed for variations in ability?
Sometimes it's an expectations issue. So, you know, things like school-based traineeships and apprenticeships, certainly Ticket to Work made those more available to young people with disabilities while they were still at school. And that certainly led to skills development and pathways to later employment. But also, yeah, you're right, some certificate level courses, people do need adapted training or modules, or they might need extra support for the hands-on practical components. So it's knowing where to get that support. So for example, in Australia, we have a disabled apprentices wage subsidy scheme. We call it DOORS. So not many people would know about that. So if people have got access to those kinds of supports and other reasonable adjustments, it certainly does make it more likely that they'll be able to undertake the program, absolutely. But I did like the way that Maddie's school worked that skill development through, you know, the crochet example that you gave there, Maddie.
Yeah.
So yeah, thinking about things from different perspectives and through different lenses rather than sort of being fixed on one way. The next one is work experience and paid employment. And we know this is the greatest predictor of later paid work for young people with disability. And again, it's something that a lot of people miss out on. And so when we talk about work experience, we're talking about a whole range of work experience, not your traditional 1 week in your 10, you know, where you do it for a week and then that's the end of it. So we're looking at after school jobs, tasters, as Maddie referred to, industry exposure days, volunteering. There's lots of ways that work experience can be undertaken. And linking back to high expectations, it's good quality work experience that keeps those expectations high and keeps building them. So that one is critical. And also a lot of young people, you know, we all know about the wages system in Australia. A 15-year-old is on a 15-year-old's wage. And once you're 18, 19, you know, you're really up around an adult wage. So people who get to 18, 19, 20 without much work experience are a bit disadvantaged in the labour market because of the way our wages system is structured. Employment supports are critical. So we're about to have a big change in our employment support system in Australia. We're getting a new Commonwealth disability employment system that will be starting in July. So linking into employment supports as early as possible is really critical, because they can do the job brokering, support you to write a resume, do the on-site support and other things that people often need. And I also know that Transition to Work is another program, certainly that Brotherhood have been involved with as well. So lots of young people can link into that one, and that's a 2-year program that's much more focused on exploring the world and the world of work rather than sort of rushing into employment. So good quality, access to good quality employment supports is really critical. And then the last one is interagency collaboration. So again, I heard Maddie talking as she was speaking, I was picking up that she'd been involved with a number of organisations in her local area. And so having different organisations working together at the structural level enables individual students to move through pathways more clearly. So that could be schools, it could be employment agencies, training providers, employer organisations, those kinds of things, and families as well. So getting everybody working together brings different funding pools, but it also gets people working more collaboratively together and bringing their kind of piece of the puzzle to the table. So they're the 6 key components that the research tells us. And as I said, it's great to hear Maddie bringing some of those to life in her presentation.
And just quickly around the support in employment and the DES reform that you mentioned, Jenny, and we know that the broader employment system, also there's been, the white paper, and there's the prospect of further reform in the mainstream system. And I guess it's interesting that we've got the sort of DES reform kind of coming in before the broader system reform, and wondering about, are they going to be kind of complementary to each other? How do we ensure that it's not a segregated system? That I think, based on what you've been saying, there's benefit in thinking about building expectations rather than lowering them through a separate system. Just wondering if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, and I think the critical thing is that the right employment supports are available. So one of the things we know about the current DES system is it's not very youth focused. It's a program for older people. So largely the cohort is over 45. So they have very different employment support needs and different goals to a young person who's coming out of school or exploring the world of work. And so that's where something like the Transition to Work program, which is it's also a Commonwealth funded program, that is more youth focused and more focused on people being able to explore their options. And, Maddie gave the example before that she thought dog grooming might have been for her, but then discovered it wasn't. So those Transition to Work programs give people lots of opportunity to explore different jobs, different roles and industries, and then they can make better choices about what suits them. So I think it's the provision of the right support that's critical rather than the program. I know that youth is a priority cohort in the new, I think they're now calling them specific cohorts. So we're going to see some more youth-focused providers coming into the disability employment system, we hope. So that might change things for young people as well. So yeah, I think the proof will be in the pudding, but unfortunately, the Commonwealth Disability Employment Service has not been youth-focused enough in the last iteration of it, and I think that's been problematic for young people.
Yeah, agree. Thank you, Jenny. I might turn to Damien now, and Damien, I'm just wondering if you could give us an overview of some of the initiatives that you've run in your environment to recruit and support young people with disabilities. And also, can you tell us some of the practical things that have worked to support young people with disabilities in the workplace?
Thank you, Julie. Thank you. And just mention, I learned a lot from the last 2 speakers. I was taking a couple of notes, so I hope everyone else is learning as much as I just learned as well. So fantastic stories and fantastic information. Look, as you mentioned before, I'm the regional manager here for NEC in the Northern Territory. We're the largest non-government ICT employer in the Northern Territory. So we play quite a big role within the ICT industry. We've had programs, youth-focused programs, employment programs for about 20 years now that I've been involved in, and since our inception. Across that time, a lot of those programs have really been looking at those pathways, providing pathways for young people to come into the ICT workforce. And a lot of that's been through traineeship and apprenticeship programs. Across that time, a big focus of ours has been to focus on people with disadvantages or facing disadvantages. And in the Northern Territory, obviously we have quite a disadvantaged cohort of, Indigenous population here in the Northern Territory, faces many challenges, and of course people with disabilities. And also at the same time, being an ICT industry, we have a low proportion of participation from women and young women entering our workforce. And these are kind of the three factors that we've looked at across that time. And particularly in the last few years, with quite a more significant focus on trying to attract and provide different pathways for people with disabilities. We've learned from those different programs what works and what doesn't work, and we're still learning all the time. As I've mentioned, I've made some notes here that I'll be working on a couple of things with our programs. I think key with our programs as well. So recently, some of the programs that we've introduced outside of our school-based apprenticeship and our traineeship for those people who have left school have been a number of programs focused on providing opportunities for people with neurodiverse disabilities and challenges. Yep. And that has been in with consultation and work with YouthWorks NT as well, who had a complementary program that assisted ours. And one of the things that we found, of course, is it's providing that opportunity, that initial opportunity, and I think as mentioned, as a taster type of thing. And we need more people in our industry, and we face skill shortages within our industry, and we need to broaden the pool of people we're bringing in. And so we're trying to provide tasters for people, and then finding the right pathway within our workplace for them to succeed. And I think that that's been a critical element of the success of our programs. Is it is not just about, well, this is the program and this is exactly how it works. It's about, this is the program, and the program works for the people that are participating, and we adjust the program as necessary to meet those requirements. For instance, with our traineeship and school-based apprenticeship programs, we were finding that because there was for school-based apprenticeship, there's a school-based element, there's a VET element, and there's a work placement element as well with those programs. And sometimes it was too much, and we were finding that people weren't necessarily succeeding in the VET, but in the work placement part of the program, they were 100% succeeding and moving into permanent jobs. So, adjustments we looked at with those programs was to provide opportunities for people not necessarily to have to worry about the VET side, to focus on the work placement component of that program. And that's very much the approach that we've taken recently, with the programs that we've brought in for people, young people facing disabilities, is to not necessarily always have to go through a school-based apprenticeship or a traineeship, but provide a work placement for them that will then lead to permanent employment. And we've been quite successful on that. I also have a number of roles within the industry here locally. I'm in a part of the Australian Computer Society and also the local ICT&T Industry Association. And through my involvement within those associations as well, I've taken what we've learned here and the funding that we've got through other programs that we're working with the Northern Territory Government to provide opportunities for young people with disability in those programs as well. And one of those programs, which we've just started in the last 6 months, involves providing a traineeship to a young person with a disability and then placing them across multiple workplaces in the local industry, including government, university, but also private enterprise, and giving them opportunities across all of those to learn the different aspects of ICT that they may then choose and look for a future opportunity. We're halfway through the first cohort of that program, and the young people involved, it's fantastic. The fact, when I go and visit them and talk to them, just the smiles and just happy they are as to the success of those programs for them personally. And the same thing with their work placement.
Yeah, so flexibility, I'm hearing flexibility, sort of tailoring, and then a really collaborative effort across the workplace, education or skills building and government and other local employers, I think is sort of what I'm hearing from you, that's definitely been successful.
Yeah. 100%. I think part of that as well, and is you have to prepare the people within your workplace as well. They need to know how to treat people and what to expect, and and adjust themselves in that sense. If people with disadvantage have disadvantages that provide barriers for them, and if you become one of those barriers, you're not part of not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. So, you know, with our expectations, we create with people in our programs as they're moving through, it's a pathway to further and ongoing employment. It's a preparation. If all of our people here have the expectation, and we talk to them all of the time, this is the pathway. These people are working through preparedness for permanent and ongoing employment. Don't treat them as you would someone that's been here for 10 years and, you know, something's not quite right for them, you know, a challenge that they face and they can't come to work on a certain day and things like that. Show understanding and empathy. And that's what's really important, I think. And that's for all young people. All young people face many challenges.
That's right. Yeah, especially in that kind of really key sort of period of their life where there's a lot of change potentially, and navigation. And, you know, not always the first thing that people choose is the right thing. So it's about having that sort of openness, I suppose, to support people through that. Yeah. I'm wondering about, you talked about expectations, and I know that, you know, some of the research has also looked at, you know, what's the impact of low expectations for young people with disabilities, whether it's in school or whether it's in the workplace or in some kind of apprenticeship or workplace-based experience. And I'm just interested for any of our panellists really to make comment on how might we change this culture of low expectations for young people with disability. I'm wondering, Damien, if you wanted to start off.
Yeah, look, I think, you know, the first thing is, and probably Jenny touched on it with what she was saying before, I think it creates a ceiling, an imposed ceiling. And so if we, you know, have this expectation that they're not going to succeed, immediately you're ensuring failure. And that's what you have, you know, that's a terrible thing to put on anyone at any time, and any young person, let alone someone that's facing the challenge of, you know, the challenge of their disability or whatever whatever the challenges that a disadvantage that they face. So I think, you know, we need to realise that there's a role for everyone, there's an opportunity for everyone, and we shouldn't put a ceiling on it. We should try and explore the fullness of that opportunity for everyone until they decide that they've found the fit and the niche that they like, and then and that they're good at, and allow them to explore that. And so I think that really comes down to ourselves and changing our perceptions of what is possible.
Thanks, Damien. And Jenny, I'm wondering at that sort of systems level, what your thoughts are around changing this culture, systems being government and you know, the employment system, the school system, and what you might have noted through your research of what might make a change.
Yeah, I think we have very siloed systems in this country now, and I think the individualisation from the new National Disability Insurance Scheme, it's not so new anymore, but that's probably almost made it worse because people have got money in their own pocket to buy their services. So we're not necessarily seeing sort of systems joined together. There's not funding. If there's not funding in the system for collaboration, because collaboration takes time and effort and energy, and so organisations that are very individualised in their service delivery models are not going to have those resources available to them to do that collaborative work. So I think recognising, for example, that schools don't have connections necessarily to employers. So if somebody like Damien was to go to the local schools and offer an ICT taster program to year 9, 10 and 11 students at a local special school, for example, you know, that's opening up a whole world of opportunities to the students that they might not have access to. And the same, I think the other thing with collaboration is sort of understanding what other people in the system, what other organisations' goals are and what their values are, because you can often align, if you align with the right organisations, you can work together, and we really saw this in Ticket to Work. You can really align your efforts so you're all achieving your goals and outcomes, but more importantly, the young person is achieving their goals and outcomes. But, you know, it's the sum of many parts leads to a better outcome for people. And we also saw that people learned from each other. So the schools learned more about the employment system, the employment system learned from the employers, and, you know, it kept moving around. So there's opportunities when we collaborate to actually build our, in real time, to be learning skills and gaining knowledge about what young people need and building those structured pathways. So, if Damien's organisation was offering the program at a system level, at an organisational level, then the young people can flow through into that program. And I think that's really important as well.
Julie, can I just add to what Jenny said?
Yeah, sure.
I think everything she said is fantastic and probably fits with what we've seen here. And I spoke before, I touched before on the YouthWorks NT program, and the real benefit of that program, which was funded by Google at the time and had quite significant numbers of cohorts coming through. It really helped us as an organisation connect with young people with disability, because we weren't getting the number of applications that we would like to have seen for our various programs until we were working with YouthWorks NT. And I think, working with an organisation like that has quite significant benefits, particularly where your goals are aligned. And they are helping you connect because they are better placed. Like, we have a traineeship and apprenticeship manager who always supports and is there for all of our young people in all of our various programs, supporting them. But here's an extension of that, and another group of people that are also supporting these young people. Unfortunately, and this probably touches on what some of Jenny's concerns are within, from our government and approach at the moment. YouthWorks NT, fantastic program, fantastic outcomes for young people with disabilities, but no longer has the funding to run that program in the Northern Territory. And I think that's a travesty of, success that can't be maintained because of a lack of funding for something that has proven success in our local environment and industry here. So, this is what we need to do better at.
And so how do we make that change then, I guess? As a collective, we've talked about how important it is to collaborate. And I know from a BSL perspective, we very much believe in systems working in collaboration, and BSL often fulfills that enabling role to join up parts of the system. And sort of the National Collaboration on Employment and Disability is a good example of that we started in 2023. But how do we how do we move these systems towards what will work or what we know will work, whether it's from your own experience, Damien, or what the research is telling us, Jenny, or from your lived experience, Maddie? And what's going to make that difference, do you think?
I'll go first. Look, I think it's just working together is the first thing, and finding people that are, have a passion, and I think, as from an industry perspective, it's important for industry involvement. And I think everything leads to a job, needs to lead to a job. And that means industry and people within business need to be focused and connecting with these opportunities to provide employment. Otherwise we have all these programs and they'll lead to nothing if we're not connecting in with industry. And so I think that's a key. And from an industry perspective, people need to be passionate and find reward in employing young people and young people with disadvantages and disabilities. For myself personally, I remember being on a panel probably a year ago with Dr. Dinesh, and he spoke a lot about when he was a young man, how he was very externalizing a lot of what he saw as success. And then he's learnt through his disability that's more important about what's internal and, and what you could, the difference you can make for others type of thing. And I think, for those in industry that have been successful from an industry perspective, it's about giving back, and finding reward in making a difference for other people that face disadvantage. And sometimes we have had all the advantages in the world, and now we need to make a difference for someone else. And that is very rewarding in itself. And if we get more people within industry realizing that, then I think that we help connect everyone and cement that system in a better way. As well as, and I say, federal funding and government funding is key to all of this in the right way with programs that are proving that they're a success.
So capturing that evidence is important as well, and evaluation of what works to sort of line up with the research that tells us, what works as well. I'm just wondering, Maddie, whether what you would sort of think about, what's going to make the difference. Is it about replicating your experiences that you've had at David Scott School and now within BSL and your role as a youth advocate. There's certainly a few questions in the Q&A that speak to that, and people wanting to understand a little bit more about what you're doing now in your role. So I just wanted to give you that opportunity, I suppose, to respond to that.
Yeah, sorry. So how
So tell us a little bit about what you're doing in your role at the moment with BSL.
So in my role at the moment with BSL, I'm giving my insight and helping to can I come back to that question?
Yeah, of course you can. Yeah. Jenny, just wondering if you have any
I can jump in there, because I think what we heard when Maddie was talking earlier, and I think sometimes people don't sort of see systems because they're, well, you know, they're part of something, but they're not part of the bigger system. And I love listening to Maddie talking about the way the school had structured, by collaborating with other organisations, they had structured a lot of opportunities for her. And so she seamlessly kind of dipped in and out of a lot of opportunities throughout her time at David Scott School, without probably realising that those were there because they were collaborating so well with other organisations. And I think if we don't call out the role of that coordinating body, and this is what Ticket to Work did so well, is that they had a funded collaboration coordinator in the middle of the network. And so that person's role was to keep the collaborative structure moving and working well, you know, kind of a bit like a clock. You need, you know, all the moving parts need to be coordinated. Yeah, so I think what Maddie experienced was a good collaborative structure that allowed her to move around the system more easily, dipping in and out of what appealed to her or what she needed at that time. And often schools are much more siloed than that, so they don't have those collaborative structures in place. So my thing would be, let's fund it. If we want collaboration, we've got to fund that work.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen without deliberate and purposeful funding and support and resources. That's how you get good collaboration.
And that funding, or rather that collaboration, you know, and what that looks like on the ground, I suppose, in terms of communication and that sort of continuity between the different supports that are provided, whether it's within the school setting or the workplace, or it might be recruitment agencies, or it could be a youth agency where there are pathways. I know, Damien, you've worked with different organisations like that as well. But the need to sort of have a cohesive strategy and approach and wrapping around the young person, I think, is what I'm hearing is really important. Maddie, did you want us to come back to you?
Yes, sorry about that. For the question of what I'm currently doing in my role, I'm using my experiences as a young person with disability to help improve the employment system, giving advice to create resources and training, thinking about what we can do to make employment more inclusive for others, and advising on all issues that young people with disability face. So I'm using a lot of the experiences that I've spoken about today as something that's really helping with creating resources. And,
incredibly valuable insights that you're able to provide, Maddie, and other youth advocates that we have within BSL as well. Really important that we centre our work and our approach on what young people are telling us work, and then being able, as I said, to enable the multiple organisations that form part of this ecosystem to support young people with disabilities as well. I'm just looking through the questions. There's quite a few. So I'm sorry if I can't get to all of them. But I think, you know, one person has said that, you know, if someone has a negative experience, then the sense of failure for that person can be really devastating. And I think we know that's true. I think also I'm just looking through some of the other questions. There's a recognition for you, Damien, that you're part of the Greater Darwin Community Investment Committee, which is part of the National Youth Employment Body. Do you want to talk a little bit just briefly about that and your role on that, Damien?
Oh, look, I guess I bring a industry focus and lens, to the opportunities that we can assist with for young people, and probably sharing our experiences of the last, 20 plus years of, providing opportunities and working with young people. And, we've had failures and we've learnt from those failures. And I think it's important to share those learnings and, and those opportunities. And that's, I think, the benefit of, being part of that program and really focusing on young people. I know how much of a challenge. I've got 3 young children at the moment that are all going through it themselves into employment, and I guess all of us should be trying to make an effort of assisting, because this is our workforce of the future. All these young people, we've really got to bridge that gap and overcome all disadvantage, and maximise the potential for what's here in Australia right now.
And that's the exciting part about it, isn't it? It's really, as the sort of name of this webinar is, it's opening opportunities. And those opportunities will look unique to everybody. And again, that bringing in the flexibility, the sort of tailoring, the focus on the young person's needs, and trying to kind of create that ecosystem around them so that that those supports can come and go as needed, I think is key. Certainly what we've heard today from each of you. And
I was going to add there, Julie, as well. I think we also lose focus sometimes on the growth that young people between 15 and 20 that happens. So we can't expect a 15-year-old to know about work and know everything about work. They're 15, they're just starting their journey. So they're they're joining the ladder. So sequencing things and making sure that things are happening in the right order. So we're not putting, we're responding with our interventions at the right time in that young person's development. And so, 15, 16, 17, it's about explore the world, learn as much as you can about who you are and what you like and what you want to do. And then it's after school that you start to narrow a bit further into different careers that might be of interest to you. So expecting a 15-year-old to know what they want to be when they grow up or to have work skills, we often judge 15-year-olds through an adult lens. They're 15, so what they need is lots of stepping stones and rungs of the ladder to get to this kind of adult life, which we now know is from 25 onwards is when we sort of reach full adulthood now. So, if we've got that eye on getting people ready and preparing them for that later period of adulthood, that helps us sequence and know what opportunities we need to be providing for people at the right time.
And I dare say adults still are navigating what they want to do.
Often, that's exactly right.
But you're absolutely right there. And now we know that people will also move through different careers through their lifetime as well. So locking somebody into one path is not really very contemporary either, when we think about the workplace and how people move around through that now. We need to end the discussion there. I just wanted to remind people, as I mentioned, BSL has the National Collaboration on Employment and Disability, and you can go to the website to find out more about what we do. It's an enabling and a capability hub. So we work with government, schools, employment services, disability services, advocates, researchers, employers, parents and carers, and of course young people with disability, to try and look at what are the barriers and what are the enablers for young people to get on with living, learning and working. And that website address is nced.org.au. I want to thank again our panellists. Thank you to Maddie. Thank you to Jenny. Thank you to Damien. Fantastic discussion today. Farewell to everybody online. Thank you for your contributions through the Q&A function. and have a great day.